I'm not going to limit myself just because people won't accept the fact that I can do something else. Dolly Parton. Welcome to Casa de Confidence, a podcast for you. You'll hear some incredible women
and some awesome, cool dudes
going confidently in the direction of their dreams and living in the purpose of their heart.
You're our host,
Julie DeLucca-Collins, and you are our sidekick. # handsome hot husband.
That again.
And the producer of the show.
That I am.
I am an author, speaker, coach, dreamer, and most of all,
we help people go in the direction of their dreams
and support them on their purpose. So pull up a chair,
grab a drink,
and make yourself at home because our casa
is your casa. Welcome back to another episode of Casa de Confidence. My name's Dan.
And I'm the talent, Julie.
You are the talent. And our guest this week is the marvelous Jessica Stipanovic.
She is an upcoming addiction. Well, wait a minute. I messed that up, but I'm going to just keep going. She has an upcoming addiction memoir, and she is the host of the Sober Living Stories podcast and is the author of the 321, a personal note newsletter. 15 years in the making, Jessica's book is in the heart of her journey. Within its pages, she reveals how bold new beginnings are often distinguished as endings, and even life's most harrowing of experiences can serve to uplift and inspire. So this is a great conversation. I really enjoyed speaking to her.
It is a great conversation. Do you read that again during the episode?
Probably.
Probably.
You made me say it again.
Hey.
What?
So I tried a little different way of editing the sound of the interview this week.
You did? Well, I have stuff that I want to talk about.
So you know what I would like people to do in the comments for the episode or in the podcast.
Yes.
Let me know if the sound sounds better or not, or if you don't hear a difference. And actually, you should drop a review anyway.
Well, you know, they can actually, when they go to the show notes for this episode on any of the podcasting platforms, there is going to be a little button that says email us or text us, and you can send us your message.
You have a new button?
Well, it's not my button. It's the button that Buzzsprout gave us.
Well, it's our button, then. If they gave it to us, it's ours. We possess the button.
Yes.
So, all right. So, Julie.
Yes.
What's going on for you?
I have a few things I got to say because I have been a little silent, and you know me, I don't like being silent in certain issues. So I don't
remember you being silent.
This is my podcast, so I get to talk about it.
Okay.
Okay. I have a question first of all.
For me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So, let's see. Do you know who Margaret E. Knight is?
I don't. The name sounds familiar to me, but no, I do not.
Okay. Do you know who Josephine Cochrane is?
Josephine Cochrane?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Do you know who Mary Anderson is?
I do not.
Okay. Let me find one that you may know. Beulah Louise Henry.
I have to say no.
Ruth Graves.
Nope.
Jesus. Grace Hopper.
No.
Virginia Apgar.
No. Am I supposed to know these names?
Is
this a test?
Well, it's something you should know.
Okay.
Okay.
The thing is, I don't know a lot of names. I forget the names of my coworkers on an hourly basis. And I've worked there for 13 years.
Let me see if I can find one. How about Mary Sherman Morgan?
No.
Wow. How about Stephanie Kolek?
No.
How about Patricia Bath?
No.
How about Anna Stork and Andrea Shretha? Shretha? I don't know if I said it correctly.
No, I do not know those names.
Okay. So I'm going to tell you who a lot of these women are.
Okay.
And I'm going to talk about something that's been really weighing on my brain.
Okay.
Okay. You ready for it?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these women are the women who invented or created things that make our life every day much better. Okay. From some scientist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who created the technology to treat cancer, to the individual that invented the windshield wipers, to the person that invented coding, to the person that invented the modern technology for computers, to the person that invented and eradicated disease. There's so many different things that we don't realize that, by the way, diapers, as a woman, the dishwasher, because hello, people, if you're out there and you use a dishwasher, you should know that it was invented by a woman. And the reason I'm talking about this, and the reason I'm incredibly ticked off about this, and you're going to see me get a little more passionate about this, is we need to stop judging the choices that other people make. We have to stop that. I have a lot of friends that have chosen to stay home and have chosen to be moms. And I have such admiration and love for them. And I think that that is one of the most incredible things that they can choose. I have a lot of friends that have chosen to be moms, but did not choose, but had to have a career and work outside the home because they needed to have the money for their families. I have a lot of friends that have chosen to be incredible career women. And I know a lot of women that have climbed the corporate ladder, but wanted to be home. And I have a lot of women that chose to also go in the corporate environment and love that. And, they love also having kids and being mom, but they love their own career and have incredible gifts. Here's the thing. Cut it out. Cut it out. We cannot be judging people. And by the way, I made the choice not to be a mom, and that's okay. There's many people who have had children that I know of because as a coach, I work with individuals who felt like they had no choice and felt like that's not what they wanted to do, but society pushed them into doing that. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because
I know why.
Harrison Butker, or Buttface is what I'm going to call him.
Whoa. No,
I know.
No.
Okay, I shouldn't call names, but you know what? I'm really angry about this because I don't think it's anybody's business to tell anyone and vilify the choice of going out and getting a college degree. You told these young women who are sitting in that audience that the sacrifices that they made to get a college degree was a terrible sacrifice because all they're really good for is to stay home and be moms. And guess what? Not everyone sitting in that audience is what they aspire to be. And that's okay. And when people put expectations on other individuals, then you are really infringing in their God-given gifts. Honestly. And I'm very disappointed at people who I admire who felt that let's clap for the guy that says that woman should stay home. That's bullshit, if you ask me. And I'm really mad about this.
You know what? The days are gone. And it's not too long ago. I thought we were over this because when I was in college, the university I went to, and it was a joke on campus. Guys are here getting an education, and the women are either going for education degree, nursing degree, or their MRS.
And you know what?
For their misses to find their husband. And that's such an antiquated way of viewing things. And it's I thought we were getting past this. And then this guy comes out and says this stuff at a graduation.
And by the way,
and tells them that they've been lied to.
The thing here is that a lot of these people that have opinions don't realize that it is okay. Just like we can host two immense feelings at the same time, we can have someone die and we can be in the depth of our grieving, but we can also be not happy, but feel joy and laugh because we're human. we have the ability to be able to do multiple things at the same time.
That's
And
right.
and I think that, and by the way, don't take me wrong, it is not only the whole thing, right, about the women that pissed me off till no end. Okay? The fact that you attacked so many people and disenfranchise others pissed me off. And leave me a comment. Go ahead, because I am happy to talk about this. I am not going to stand still, and you can cancel me if you want, but I am standing strongly in my belief that all of us have a calling, and it's not the same calling for one, and it's not a one size fits all, and we are not to be conformist and kind of dress the same, be the same, talk the same, and condemn the same. We can love differently. We can live differently. We can have different dreams because our DNA is not the same. Our experiences are not the same. So we cannot expect. And by the way, if there's a young woman who sat in that audience listening to that speech, and she was the next person to create something wonderful and decided that maybe she was not called and she needed to stay home, there's a lot of people who are going to miss out.
Well, I hope that woman, I was going to say that girl, no, that woman who put in her hard work, her hard time into getting that degree, was so fired up by that speech that she becomes the person who cures cancer, who invents the next big thing, who takes our society to the next step, to where we can all do what we dream and make this society better. I hope it fired all of those young women up.
So here's the thing, and I'm going to leave it at this. Okay. The Benedictine sisters of Mount Saint Scholastica, who were part of the founders of the Benedictine College, issued a statement. And by the way, talk about courage to issue a statement as opposed to just, kind of going with the status quo. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, the president of the college had to approve the commencement speech. So he knew what was going to be said. And they said, yes, please tell our girls that they need to stay home, birthful and pregnant. That's the greatest thing a woman can do. And you know what? Being a mother it's a wonderful calling, but it's not everybody's calling. It's not. And if I had chosen to pursue motherhood above all else when you and I got married, I would not have been able to be with my dad when he was in hospice. I would not have been able to go around the country and set up educational programs for kids who needed to be educated and couldn't afford it and were receiving free services. So I believe that when we say no to one thing and we say yes to something else, we are hopefully following the vision that allows us to show up, that allows us to create an impact if we are choosing to do so. And not everybody is cut out to do the thing that everybody else is. And what the Benedictine Benedictine sister said is that our community has taught young women and men not just how to be homemakers in a limited sense, but rather how to make a gospel-centered, compassionate home within themselves where they can welcome others as Christ, empowering them to be the best versions of themselves. We reject the narrow definition of what it means to be Catholic. We are faithful members of the Catholic Church who embrace and promote the values of the gospel, Saint Benedict and Vatican II, and the teachings of Pope Francis. Go and reread some of the Bible versus that you are using to justify that this is what everybody should be doing. And by the way, I read the entire speech and I am not taking anything out of context. So let's create an inclusive, supportive community for all. Let's create a world where we no longer have to choose to be something that we're not meant to be. Let's create a place where we don't criticize each other because we don't agree with their choices. That's not right. It's not done, and it shouldn't be done. Oh, it is done, rather. But that's why we're having this whole conversation. So
this is like a modern Bridgerton.
Okay. Look at you bringing it back home, Daniel. By the way, Dan and I watched all of Bridgerton, the ones that have been released, by the way.
Anyway.
And he was just as passionate as I was in watching it.
I was actually more at one point, but anyway.
What?
I think I was.
You were not bored. You were at the edge of your seat, Daniel. Come on.
All right. I was. No, I think I was more
When were you bored
than you were.
When were you bored at this?
I didn't say bored. I said more.
Oh, more.
More excited.
Got it.
Anyway. Julie, thank you for that. I know you wanted to get that off your chest. You know what?
What?
We got the windows open today. I don't know if you guys can hear nature, and by nature, I mean the cars driving by. You might hear the birds. You might hear the cars.
I don't know. Can they hear the birds, the cars,
We'll find out when I edit this, whether you can hear all that.
Yeah. Well, we've talked a lot. And by the way, so grateful for the women and the men that are open to the possibility of sharing their gifts, because it's going to make this world a better place. So grateful for the people who are accepting and inclusive. And so grateful for the people that, even those people who I don't agree with, the people who have integrity in being kind to others.
Right.
Helping others live to their purpose. And thank you to all the amazing, incredible women who have made this world a better place, by becoming the person, a better version of themselves. There's a quote by Jane Austen that says her own thoughts and reflections were habitually her best companions. So if you're listening to this, no matter whether you're making a big choice for your life at the beginning of your life, or you're in the middle of switching to a new career, your thoughts and your reflections are going to be your best companions. And only if you allow them to be. Only if you allow yourself to think of what's possible for you, and that you have the gifts to impact at least one other person in this world and make a difference for them. Anyway.
One person at a time.
Person at a time.
You impact that person, make this, that's my whole thing. It's like when you walk into the forest, and I've said this before, trash in, trash out. Mm-hmm. You make the place where you are better for you have been there. Indeed. Make the place that you have been better for the fact that you were there. So that's kind of what I try to do is, when I meet a person or see a person or make a new friend, try to, be kind to that person. Yeah. Trash in, trash out.
Trash in, trash out.
We got to come up with a different one, though, because that sounds weird.
It is weird to me.
What?
It is weird to me, but I wasn't going to tell you you're weird.
Joy in, joy out. Kind in, kind out. And something like that. So,
kindness starts at home.
Right. You always, try to impact people's lives positively, not negatively. And
oh my gosh, I can't wait to have a conversation with people.
And you don't put your rules on other people's lives.
But people try.
People try. Yeah.
And, God doesn't even interfere with our ability, of having free will. But, anyhow. Okay. So on this episode, this conversation is really provocative because we talk about making the choice of not drinking anymore, and the expansion that it provided Jessica by starting a new life, and really beginning to see life from embracing her sobriety, self-empowerment. And again, just this journey that is helping her not only live the life of her dreams and be more confident at it, but also helping others live the life of their dreams, going after the things that matter to them. And I am incredibly grateful and honored that Jessica came to spend some time with us here at Casa de Confidence.
All right.
And don't worry, we will get this episode to you, my friends. So thank you for tuning in. And if you have comments, if you have thoughts, I'm always happy to have a respectful conversation on anything that matters.
What's your contact?
Julie, I don't care if you disagree with me.com.
Check the show notes. You can find her contacts there.
Deanna's gonna
anyway, I hope you guys all enjoy this episode with Julie and Jessica Stipanovic.
Welcome back, listeners. I'm excited to have Jessica Stipanovic with me today. And she is a writer and podcaster. She has over 18 years of sobriety, living her best life out loud. She's an upcoming addiction memoir, host of the Sober Living Stories podcast, and is the author of the 321 on a personal note newsletter. 15 years in the making, Jessica's book is the heart of her journey. Within its pages, she reveals how bold new beginnings are often disguised as endings. And even life's most harrowing experiences can serve to uplift and inspire. This is the conversation you want to tune into and not miss. Welcome, Jessica, to the show.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for having me.
I am thrilled to have you. And again, I think that, stories are the thing that connects us. I love that you are creating this memoir of your journey so that you can continue to inspire others, because you're already doing so with your podcast. I want to ask you a question. And for some of the listeners, they know where I'm going with this. I am obsessed with the Diary of a CEO podcast. I love the questions that CEOs leave for other CEOs. And based on those questions, they've put together a deck of cards. And I'm going to pick a random card for you, Jessica. And There is a CEO that wrote this question for another CEO. And these are some of the guests on the podcast. So I'm going to show you, not looking, I'm just going to randomly pick. And let's see what it says. This question is for you. Okay. So, who is someone you need to forgive and have not?
Ooh.
And while you think of that question, this question was written by Sophia Amoruso.
Wow, that's kicking it off with a really deep question.
I love deep.
Yeah, me too. So, who is someone I have to forgive, but I have not? I would say, it's a hard question because I can't think right off the top of who that would be.
But Jessica, I would imagine that you've done a lot of this work in really healing. And this,
exactly.
This is why it's such a great question for you, because you can say, hey, I've been doing this work and I've been in the journey. And I love that.
Yeah. Forgiveness played a huge role in my recovery. Mm-hmm. And it continues to, it never ends. Oh, 100%. I think the biggest person that I ever forgave that had such a profound effect was myself. And that didn't happen right away. It took a while. I remember specifically listening to a speaker, and he was standing up on the stage and he said, I drink green tea and I've forgiven myself. And at that point in my life, I was probably just a couple years free of alcohol and getting my life back on track. And I was probably drinking like 10 cups of coffee a day. I hadn't forgiven myself. The groundwork hadn't been laid.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, what is this guy talking about? I was mad. I was mad at him. I thought, how's he up there? And, years later, I was able to think of him again, and I had done the work, and I was able to forgive myself. It was a gift given to me, and I knew exactly what he was saying up there, but I wasn't in a position at that time to receive that. I was just like, maybe I was mad because it was something I needed so badly in my life, but I couldn't get to,
So interesting you say that. I think that that's really a very crucial part of the journey for us, that we are going to encounter circumstances and individuals that they're going to just say something that rubs us the wrong way. But that's a really great way to explore and to be curious. Hey, why is that hitting a nerve? And I think that you realized that, and that helped you kind of, question and begin some of that work.
Yeah. And it was, doing small for looking outside first before I was able to forgive myself. I was forgiving and getting in those conversations around me with either loved ones or friends, people that throughout those 10 years, 8 to 10 years that I was struggling, I had harmed or deserted or didn't show up for enough. So it was in having those conversations that I started to learn about forgiveness and that the power of that. And then I was able to ultimately do that to myself.
I so honor you for your honesty in giving us a glimpse that this is the required work we have to do.
Yes.
And I think that sometimes we think, well, we can kind of skirt around that. I'm wondering, would you share a little bit of how was there a specific thing that led you to the path of addiction, or how did it come about? And what was the thing that you feel got you going in that direction?
Sure. I grew up in a home that, my parents were loving. They supported me. They said, you can be and do and become anything you want. And I knew that internally. I felt confident. I felt good walking in a room. I worked hard. I went to school. I did well, and there was just a little bit later in my life, the latter part of my teens, right before I got into my 20s, I remember coming home from college, and I've said this before, but it was such a pivotal moment in my life. I remember coming home and being at a bar where everybody was congregating and having fun on the break and just talking it up. And I remember sitting there and feeling so unbelievably by myself and so apart from. And it was really because I knew from a very young age what I wanted to do. Okay. And I don't think that, maybe they did too, but we just weren't talking about that. So I felt that I always knew I wanted to write a book. I always knew I wanted to go to Africa. I had two specifics. Okay. And there it was like a non-negotiable. And so when I was there, I remember thinking, how am I going to accomplish this? I wanted to do it then. I was just consumed with fulfilling the dream, fulfilling the purpose. And everybody was just having such a good time being present that that day, I just kind of compared myself and set myself apart from. And it's a pivotal moment because I had the confidence coming from my family and my home to pursue my dream. But I didn't. Instead, I compared myself out. I saw myself as apart from. And, I recently listened to your TEDx talk and I really loved it.
Oh, thank you. That's so kind of you.
You talk about entering into that history room and not having the confidence to say, oh, I'm in the wrong place, for about 6 months, right?
Yeah.
And I resonated with that so much because at that night, I was sitting there. It's like I did the same thing and it lasted for like 8 years. Like I took myself not out of a classroom, but I took myself out of society, my place in it, my role, sister, daughter. Like I just compared myself and said, well, I don't want anything, I don't want the cookie cutter home. I don't want to run and get married. I don't want to follow the normal path, but I didn't have any like-minded individuals at that time to say, oh, you want to do that? You want to write a book? You want to do this? Here's how you do it. And quite honestly, I hadn't lived the life that I needed to fill the pages of the book anyway. So I was really lost. And that was really my exit out and apart from, and I kind of rode that for the next 8 years. And I started we also had, dynamic in my family change. My parents were married for 30 years. They decided to separate. And, as adults, because we were adult children at that time, they are allowed to make their decisions and it did well, but it was sad for us. And I kind of took that role, even though nobody asked me to like make sure they were okay. And that's when my drinking picked up. And I think I crossed a certain line there. And from that point, I really couldn't get a hold of it over the years. It's what I went to. It consumed my life. And yeah, it took me over and kind of interrupted and stopped pretty much everything I was doing until I was able to come to a solution.
Thank you for sharing that. I want to unpack a little bit of what you said about the comparison. I heard it said long ago, and I remember kind of being a little angry too at this when someone said comparison is the thief of joy. And I realized that, it's so easy to compare and despair. And really, that's a little bit of what kind of sets us off in a path that rather than moving forward, we try to fill with other things to distract us from what we feel is lacking within ourselves. I also, think that being consumed by something is, again, something that we feel is missing, and we need to just hang on to something to belong, to feel that we're okay, to kind of numb our feelings. What was the first sign for you that you knew that you had a problem, that you needed to change?
The first sign for me, I believe probably came from other people. I remember specifically, I had moved out to California. I was living in the Hollywood Hills, and the person that I was living with said to me one day, I had a job at a publishing company. I would come home. I would go for a run, have a couple of drinks. And she said, you might be, I think you might be an alcoholic. She had family members that were. And I said, and I was so offended. And I thought, she said, I think you might have, a drinking problem. And
that's pretty bold.
And I said, well, she was bold. She was probably one of the strongest people I know. So it wasn't bold for her. And she was right. But at the time I was so offended, and I said, everybody deserves a drink after work. And it went downhill so quickly. Shortly after she said that I had moved out from her house, and it wasn't too long after that I exhibited it just became everything. It became everything. It was morning, it was after work, and it was night, and there was nothing else. And I eventually came home from California, flew home, and, I would spend probably the next 8 years trying to figure out what was wrong. Cause I didn't have the people around me who were saying, hey, your body's changed. You're an alcoholic. You're doing this. I mean, I was thinking, well, I needed that.
Yeah.
I thought, well, I'll stop having a drink when I feel better and when I'm not so depressed, right, or when I'm not so anxious. I thought it was helping me, but because I didn't know about the disease of alcoholism, every drink that I was having was actually hurting me. Yeah. And it wasn't until years later that I would meet people who would be able to help me understand that. Yeah. And eventually save my life, because that's what they did.
I think that, we hear the messages so many times, and it's not until we're ready and get to a point and whether or not we hit the proverbial rock bottom, right? But there's a point in which all of a sudden we're paying attention more. It kind of clicks for us. I'm so glad you were surrounded with the right people. What was it like then when you started to do the work in yourself, and what did you start with as far as becoming sober and really tackling the disease?
I think the biggest difference in my normal everyday, being self-sufficient, living on my own at that time, I was very defiant anyway. So I think what happened and what helped to get me to my solution quicker was that I just surrendered to everything. The fact that it was very clear to me that I did not know how to do this or solve this or get better. And once I knew what it was, I began to listen to people that had more time than me, that had a life that was working, free of alcohol, and to really listen to what they said, regardless of whether I agreed with it or not, and just lay it down and do what I was told, because they said it would work. And, I really started to do that. And, whether I wanted to or not, I think I tell my son, he's 11. I have 3 children, and I have the home and everything that I was around from before, it's so funny. But I tell him all the time, I said, the real gold in life is on the other side of doing something you really probably don't want to do. So, he can get comfortable at 11, understanding that, to show up and to do the hard thing, or to do the right thing, whether it's for yourself, is often not the easier way, but that's where you're going to get the true goals and results of whether it's integrity and respect for yourself again, because you're living right, or because you're treating other people the way they're supposed to be treated, because your life is back on track.
Incredible insights. And I think that, that's not only good advice for your son, but for the listeners and all of us tuning into what you're saying. It's definitely a great reminder. I would imagine you found yourself in circumstances that you look back and, it's hard to believe the things that we've been through. What is one thing that that you are grateful for that you were able to overcome, or any circumstance that maybe knocked you down that you were able to overcome? And how did you?
I think that, well, the thing that just jumps into my mind is that I used to travel a lot out of the country by myself. And, I thought I'd leave and come back better, for my family, for my friends. But I didn't really have my answers in place yet for what was really truly wrong with me. So I always came back not much better, but I did have the experience of traveling. And I remember I was in Indonesia once, in this little town called Ubud. I lived there for about a year. And it's a beautiful little artist village town. And if anyone's ever been there, and wow, I guess if I look in retrospect, I wasn't drinking at the time, but I wasn't well. So I really, my story is one of untreated alcoholism, and it's kind of just as dangerous, if not more so, than when you're drinking, you know? And I remember being there, and it was a time that there was one specific afternoon that I really was struggling, and I really wanted to, just give up. Mm-hmm. And because I was having such a hard time, I was physically not well. And I just knew that was when I needed to hold on the tightest. That was it. It was just clear as day. Like, this is when you want to let go. So then that is your cue to hang on. And so that has served me so many times in my life. And now when I talk to people and they're going through a difficult time in their life, I think they're going to be fine. Like, they can be completely okay. Mm-hmm. Like, this is an opportunity. Yeah. Because my darkest moments were my biggest opportunities. Mm-hmm. And because I did not give up. You know, and
I want to cheer you for that
moment.
Jessica, I wish I had my pom-poms here, because I want to cheer for that. I think that it's so true. And I want to encourage the listeners to really go back and listen to what Jessica said, because yes, our darkest moments can be the most pivotal moments and the gifts that we needed. But a lot of times we look at these dark moments and we go into that despair spiral. Oh, woe is me. But the reality is that these things happen for a reason, and you can leverage them for good, for your life. And I love that you're saying that. Was there one person in particular that was very instrumental in your recovery?
There was many people who were instrumental in my recovery. And I think that is so important for people to get with community. You know, I see it now online so much, and I love that people share their true self, and then they build a community around it, because there were so many people. I mean, I have a handful that I still talk to today. Like probably a top 3 that, well, they just were there. You know, they just never not answered the phone. Mm-hmm. They told me the truth all the time. They saw in me what I could not yet see in myself. They held me to a higher standard than I was capable of, putting myself to at that time. And also they were willing to let me go if I didn't want to be there. And I think because of that, like, psychological space that they gave me to be myself, to, hey, if you don't want to do this anymore, go ahead and do what you want. And I'd have to hang up and really get within myself and say, no, I do want to do this, and I do want to change, I do want to go back to where I was. And yeah, so they just being honest and authentic every day, and present every day. And they really just walked me through until I was able to get back on my feet.
I love that. There's something that I talk about in this podcast, is the concept that I learned from a good friend in one of my first or second episodes, and is the concept of believing mirrors. And we really need that in our life. And I'm so happy that you talked about these people reflected to you your gifts, your goodness, and also gave you the space to do it on your own, not enable you, but were there waiting for you when you needed a hand up and someone to come alongside of you in your journey. I think that that's beautiful. You talked a lot about the journey that you've been on, and you've written a memoir. For many of us, there's always that little something that is compelling us to write a book. What can we expect from your book? What can we see, and what are the things that you really open up about in your book.
Okay. Yeah. So it's a book about, it's not a chronological, from my birth to my adulthood. What it really captures is me overcoming alcoholism in my early adulthood, in my 20s. It talks about not just me, but it talks about all the people that I came into contact with during that time that taught me something
Beautiful.
incredible from their life. Whether it was someone I met if I was working at a homeless shelter in Brooklyn, or I was on a cancer floor sitting with people in chemos, like I used to just find myself in all of these places of helping people because I was trying to stay on that side. I was trying to always stay on this side where I could serve instead of having to be served. So I wrote about these people I came into contact with and who were somewhere. There's a woman that I talk about that survived a domestic violence incident, which, I had experiences with very early on. So there's just a little bit of everything, but it's all about highlighting a difficult situation and pulling the life lesson from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think difficult situations are around us so many different times, but many people don't know how to pull the lessons from it. What is your advice for the individuals who are facing something challenging in their life right now and maybe are not sure how to pull the lessons or really work through some of these difficulties and mountains that we need to climb in life?
Yeah, so I think the number one thing, I've had a couple friends recently go through some difficult things. And if I think of that right now, I would say sometimes when you're in it, it's so big or so sad, whether it's a loss or a struggle, or that you can't do anything in the moment. So it's okay to do nothing. It's okay to give yourself some time and get a little bit of distance from it before you start coming up with a solution. But in the meantime, surround yourself with people who love you and care about you. So they're gonna give you that time, and you're just not alone in it.
Yeah.
It was hard for me because when I was actively drinking, because I was such a lone person. I think I specifically did that. I would say, I don't want to show up there. I don't want this in my life. I don't like society in this, because it really served my drinking, where it would keep me alone, keep me by myself so I could do what I want. So I would just say to any listeners that are going through something difficult is, if you see yourself pulling off to the side to be isolated during your difficult time, just make sure you're making good choices for yourself. And you're not doing it, if you want some alone time, that's great, but you're not doing it to numb or, just give yourself time in that space. And don't be afraid of the people that love you.
Yeah, I think, sometimes we retreat into ourselves, but we don't keep the faith in knowing that there's people outside of us that we can reach out to. And by the way, I know that at times I'm an extrovert, but at times I do need to reconnect and kind of sit in the quiet. But if I'm going through something, I can't stay in that quiet. I need to remember that there's other people outside of me cheering me on or there to support me. And community is incredibly important. We cannot do the work alone. And you certainly continue to, share and reiterate the importance of having that support system in anything that we're going through. Your podcast So we're living stories.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me, what was the idea behind it, and what can individuals expect from listening to the show?
Sure. So the idea behind it originally was, a lot of times, well, when you're writing a book, what's really just as important as the manuscript is to build a platform in which the book can be like launched into the world. And so that's a difficult part if you're just used to writing. But it's also necessary if you want your message to have a wider reach. And I did. And I didn't know what I was going to do there, but I did land on hosting a podcast. And what happened was it turned into something so much more than that. And, from the moment it began, the guests have not stopped coming. Like I haven't even had to reach out. They're just coming in. And so we highlight individuals who have overcome alcoholism or addiction. It could be food, drugs, money, anything that has interrupted their life. And then we talk about the incredible transformation that's taken place since they've been able to put that down. And that's it. I let them take their story and share it as theirs. It's people from all walks of life, all spiritual backgrounds. There's no set script. We haven't needed one. And it's been a real joy to do. We're continuing on, and I'm looking forward to what's ahead for that. And I really love highlighting people, and they're so courageous to come on and share themselves with listeners. It's really bold and brave, and the messages have been really powerful.
Well, you are bold and courageous yourself to be able to kind of trailblaze for others in this journey. I know that there are individuals listening, and again, alcoholism is a disease, but again, we live in a society that is very readily accepted, that you're going to have a drink, that you're going to meet for drinks, that you're going to have alcohol around you in most circumstances. How does someone know that maybe they're in trouble, that they need to look at this not just as, your regular social drinking? And what were some of the signs that you then, obviously your friend said to you, you're an alcoholic, you have a problem, and you started to take a look after hearing that. But what are things that people should pay attention to, especially us women, right? I have many of friends, and by the way, I raised my hand after a long day. We're like, oh my God, I need a glass of wine, right? And it's so accepted. But how can we start to pay attention to these signs that maybe we need to look at this in a different way?
Yeah, well, I think it's an internal decision. It's a self-diagnosed disease, and I think like exactly what you said it's so accepted. I think when you start to do things that are not acceptable, I think when you start to do things quietly, behind closed doors, before you show up, after you leave, and it affects everybody differently. You talked about women, and we talk about women being beyond recall so much quicker than men.
Yeah.
And I think that's very true. And I've met so many women who have, recently I met someone who didn't start drinking until she was, 40.
Wow.
And had trouble shortly thereafter. Then you have some women who can drink for 20 years and not come to the fact that they have a problem until later. I think it's, there is a social stigma around alcoholism, and saying it out loud. I didn't talk openly about this. I have 18 years without alcohol, but I wasn't talking openly about it until this past year. And that's even been a process.
Yeah.
But, I think that it's important. It's important to just, if you're thinking you have a problem, that's what someone said to me. Most people aren't sitting around wondering if this is a problem or not. They're just doing their life, know? So that's a small clue.
That's a small clue for sure. I love that you're saying that you have a 7-day happiness challenge. 7 days of creating habits for a healthier you. Tell me more about that, because you're sharing this resource with our listeners. So tell me more of what listeners can expect.
Yeah, so I created a 7-day happiness challenge. It's a mini workbook delivered straight to your inbox for you to print, or you can fill it in. It's fillable. They're prompts 7 days out of the week. So each day you will get a prompt, whether it is to look outside of what your normal day looks like and reach for something. I did it because we tend to go toward the negative. You wake up, hit the ground running like, oh, what do I got to do today? And when there's a focus on positivity, when there's a highlight on like the gratitude of the day, what's going on here that I can be thankful for and great, even if it's just a mess. But we have to kind of train our brains for that.
Yeah. Agreed.
It's like we, hit the ground and say, this is going to be a great day. And your brain will say, oh, okay. And so these prompts and such are they're like that. So there's one for each day, and I hope everyone gets something out of it, because I certainly did.
Love it. I love it. What was the process for putting it together, and what has been the feedback that others have given you on the 7-day challenge?
Very good. So the process for putting it together is exactly what I said. Like we talk about heavy subjects. Overcoming addiction and alcoholism it's heavy, but when you get on the other side of that, there's a lot of deep meaning, because you came from something that could have ultimately really hurt you, and it didn't. Yeah. So, there's a lot of gratitude in that. So I started there, and that was the original process. Was I was going to do a gratitude workbook. But I ended up turning it into a 7-day, because I wanted there to be not just where you sit down and fill up a gratitude page. I wanted there to be 7 days where you kind of retrain your brain to start thinking like, how can I put ideas of how you can go out into the world and do this, like help somebody, serve somebody, do this.
Oh, so good.
Yeah. So, you have some options there. Call someone you haven't called in a long time that you felt like you needed to connect with again. Just stuff that kind of heals up those little things. We have all these things sitting on our shoulders, right? And it's like, oh, I got to do that, or I haven't done that. Amazing. I haven't talked to that person. I should have and it's taken them off, so we could be light and show up in a room without all of the stuff, and I think that workbook starts that process off.
Oh, good. Well, it's incredibly generous for you to put something together and a tool that individuals can use. What a compelling story you have. You have been incredibly open, and I appreciate that. And I'm so grateful for you. How do people connect with you? Where can they find the podcast? Where can they get the book? Tell me more about that.
Okay, so the easiest way to connect is to head over to my website. It's www.jessicastipanovic, STIPANOVIC.com. And immediately there's a 321 newsletter that you can just drop your email in. And every Sunday, it'll give you the updates on the podcasts. All the links are there. So everything is just in one page.
So good.
Podcast links is on Spotify. It's Apple, Google, iHeart, wherever they listen. Great. It's called the Sober Living Stories podcast. And then all the links to the socials and such are there, and my email if anyone wanted to reach out.
Well, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Jessica. I have loved just getting to know you a little better, hearing your wisdom and your story. And I know that this conversation is going to be able to help someone in their journey and definitely begin to kind of take the steps to become a better version of themselves. So thank you for being here. Will you come back?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you, everybody. Make sure that you go and you visit Jessica. We're going to have her information in the show notes. And more importantly, Jessica, listener, go confidently in the direction of your dreams. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Casa de Confidence. We thank you for listening. And if you want more, go to casadeconfidencepod.com. Check Julie out on her socials as Julie DeLucca-Collins. And you can also check out her website at goconfidentlycoaching.com. Have a great week, and don't forget, go confidently in the direction of your dreams.
Hi, everybody. I know that sometimes we get very lonely in this entrepreneur journey, and I want to invite you to join us into our limited time only Purposeful You Mastermind. For many of us entrepreneurs, we believe that we can do it all, but the reality is that doing it alone only creates a lot of overwhelm. So join us at the Purposeful You Mastermind. You can find out more information by going to bit.ly/Julie's Mastermind. This is going to be the place where you are able to then unlock your full potential and achieve long-term success for your business. Push you behind your current limits, expand your connections, discover new ideas, and implement them with confidence. You're going to get the support in all aspects and transforming you to the six-figure business you've been looking for. Pause and get off the hamster wheel if you've been spinning around. This is a time where you can get that support from like-minded entrepreneurs that are here to join you in your journey. Together, we can challenge the assumptions and land the speaking engagements and opportunities we want to grow our business and make an impact in the lives of people. See you then. Remember, you can find the mastermind at bit.ly, Julie's Mastermind.